Sweetened condensed milk is a good ingredient for sweet recipes because of all the added sugar, about 25% by weight. But when sweetened condensed milk was invented in the 1800s, the original reason for adding sugar to the milk was not for flavor, but for protection against spoilage, and it works. Even after you open the can, sweetened condensed milk keeps longer than fresh milk. That added sugar kills bacteria that would otherwise digest the milk and spoil it. The sugar kills not by poisoning the bacteria, but by a more direct physical process. It draws water out of the bacteria so the bacterial cells shrivel and die. Each bacterial cell has a sort of skin, technically a membrane. Water can pass through this membrane pretty easily, but substances dissolved in the water can't. Water has a natural tendency to move toward any region where there's a high concentration of dissolved substances. A bacterial cell in a can of sweetened condensed milk finds itself immersed in an extremely concentrated solution of sugar. Water inside the cell will, therefore, pass out through the cell membrane into the sugar solution. The bacterial cell dehydrates and dies in the sea of sugary water. Sugar added to fruit has the same effect. That's the idea behind fruit preserves. Other foods are preserved with salt, exploiting the same principle.
Greenhouse gases act as a layer of insulation, trapping some of the sun's warmth before it is released back into space. This process is known as the greenhouse gas effect. The primary greenhouse gases from energy production and consumption are methane and carbon dioxide. The rate at which we have added greenhouse gases to the atmosphere since industrialization is the leading cause of climate change. Climate change is causing extreme weather events like droughts, floods, fires, and hurricanes. These events will increase in frequency if we do not reduce emissions in the atmosphere. For much of human history, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere have been kept at safe levels by natural carbon sinks, such as oceans, forests, and wetlands. However, we are now adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere faster than natural carbon sinks can absorb them. When people talk about climate change, they often reference the average increase in temperature around the world. For instance, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, has recommended a cap of 1.5 degrees Celsius as the maximum amount of average warming that can happen while maintaining a safe environment for people.
Blood types are inherited, just like you inherit your eye color or your hair texture. So you get a gene from each parent, and that determines what the child's blood type is going to be.
There's 4 different blood types?
There is. There's type A, type B, type AB, and type O. And the only difference is what sugar molecule is added to that point. There are some studies that show that the reason the A, B, O, and AB have been distributed the way they were was because of forces that they think are primarily connected to the organism that causes malaria. It turned out to be that people who had type O were actually able to survive an attack of malaria. It appeared that the malaria organism was more readily able to attach to red cells that were type A or type B and actually kill those patients before they had a chance to reproduce. Those people who had type O actually would get sick but wouldn't die and had an opportunity to reproduce, and that's how the gene goes forward. And then if you look at a map of where malaria is now and where the different peoples are, you can see that the type O has followed areas where there's malaria. A and B has gone to colder climates where malaria wasn't a problem. And then AB was just a combination of the races.
The word solstice means sun standing in Latin. It marks the point when the sun stops at its most northerly or southerly point relative to the equator before reversing direction. For the summer solstice, the sun would appear at its highest point in the sky. and is the day with the longest period of daylight. It happens twice a year, once in both the northern and southern hemispheres. The summer solstice in the northern hemisphere occurs around the 21st of June, but it does not always occur on this day, as it all depends on when the sun reaches its northernmost point from the celestial equator. It can happen between the 20th to the 22nd of June. Around this time, in areas north of the Arctic Circle, it is possible to witness the sun not set at all, so are dubbed Land of the Midnight Sun for this very reason. This occurs because the Earth's rotational axis is tilted. The Earth rotates around an axis inclined at an angle of 23.5 degrees in relation to its orbital plane around the Sun. It is this tilt that gives us our seasons. Summer occurs in the hemisphere that is tilted towards the Sun, whilst winter falls on the hemisphere that is tilted away from the Sun.
Transportation refers to systems which are designed to move people and goods. It provides people with access to what they value and need to live their lives, build economies, and interact with the environment. Transportation is the backbone of a global network that trades over 18 trillion worth of goods and moves the world's population over 81 trillion kilometers every year. The system also impacts the climate. As of 2015, transportation accounted for 23% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. One way to understand this complex system is by breaking it down into 3 different components: mode, fuel type, and technology. Modes of transportation allow people and goods to move across air, land, and sea. People often move by human power, cars, and planes, while goods are transported by truck, rail, or ship. Fuel is the crucial element that propels the transportation system. The primary fuel types are derived from human power, renewable fuels, and fossil fuels. Different fuels, and how they are consumed, have distinct impacts on the climate and our air quality. When petroleum products are burned in vehicle engines, they release energy, but they also release greenhouse gases and other pollutants. Currently, 95% of transportation is fueled by petroleum. However, other fuels like electricity and biofuels are becoming increasingly prevalent as we adopt new technologies. Technology refers to what the vehicle uses to move, like an internal combustion engine in a gas car or an electric motor in an electric vehicle. Technologies vary greatly in efficiency. Efficiency determines how much of the fuel is actually used to propel a vehicle versus energy lost in the process.